Everything that lives is designed to end. We are perpetually trapped in a never-ending spiral of life and death.
Nier Automata, or how I like to call it, Nier Automata. Originally released in 2017, it was a game that pulled many heartstrings, including my own. A game that made you think and feel with its ultimately humanistic tale. It was first envisioned by a man with a machine-like head named Yoko Taro. In actuality, Nier Automata has a long line of other games and stories spanning thousands of years, starting in the Drakengard series in 2002 to Nier in 2010 to the sequel we have now. Trying to understand how all of that connects might get you a nasty case of a headache, as Yoko Taro's universe was not made to be easily understandable. Regardless, this is not only a Yoko Taro's game, it is also a Platinum game, famous for Bayonetta and Metal Gear Rising, franchises most known for smooth, fast-paced, and satisfying combat styles, and showcasing female attributes. The original Nier title, to put it bluntly, was a failure. Low sales and generally weak reviews. However, like its predecessor Drakengard, that gave birth to the universe in one of its endings, the subject matter tackled with its story and universe was its biggest strength. Yoko Taro did not give up on its new IP, and now had a goal to match the amazing and unique world to the fluidity and engagement that only Platinum could produce. Square Enix, that once published the original title, took on the task to fund its sequel, and to our own benefit, as originally the sequel to the original Nier game was intended to be a mobile game, a farming simulator akin to Farmville.
Do you guys not have phones?
Yeah, you guys all have phones, right?
True story. Nier Automata proved to be a challenge for Platinum, as this was not only another action hack and slash game, it was also an RPG with an open world, far and wide from anything Platinum had ever created. Regrettably, it also proved to be its most unfavorable side.
Glory to mankind.
Glory to mankind.
Glory to mankind. The story and themes told in Nier Automata are extraordinarily deep. Like one of those icebergs pictures, you may look at it and just see this pretty massive tip, but when you look under it, you will find an even bigger one, with a lot more story to tell. Most of it comes down to the player interpretations, subjectiveness, others clearly intended, but all of which requires you to think to understand it. At first, the game presents itself in a pretty simple way. There was once humans, aliens came to the planet and created machines that took over the world. Androids and machines coexist in this world. Androids are modeled after humans, programmed for a single purpose: eradicate the machines and take back Earth, believing the humans are still alive, waiting for the day the machines to be extinguished, bringing forth their return. While the machines are created as part of the network, a hive mind that forms a single being. However, some machine lifeforms are cut off from this network, gaining free will, but now without purpose. It is our job as a player, controlling the androids 2B, 9S, and even 2A, as we go through the routes, playthroughs, to eradicate the machines, in the sole belief that it is our role, that we have to cleanse the Earth. As we play through the game, we quickly find out this wasn't the case. The machines had long wiped out their masters, and humans had been extinct for a millennia, which ties into the previous titles in a quite convoluted way. Towards the end of the game is where all of this comes to my nephew. As we come to know, this is completely meaningless and a lie. Humans no longer exist, and androids are still driven by this sole belief that they are still fighting for them, for their gods. The hidden purpose of Yorha is to give meaning to the androids, to the war, to their fight against the machines, to give them something to fight for.
We were designed to be killed. They built a back door in the bunker and programmed it to activate after a certain amount of time. The commander, me, 2B, sacrificial lambs. All of us. Isn't that hilarious? Doesn't it make you laugh?
9S.
You can see the Yorha bunker as a place of worship, where human history is stored, but instead of, say, a book, they are servers, and where the word mankind glory for mankind has great weight and adds meaning to all their actions. Without it, they would be left to wander aimlessly with no reason to exist. They would have gone mad with the realization, which is proven when 9S finally discovers the truth towards the end of Route B and Route C. What was once a naive and upbeat character gets to the brink of insanity as the meaning of his own existence is shattered. We can draw many parallels to real-life beliefs from this alone. Humans, for the longest time, much like the androids, were driven by something they never seen, worshipping, finding ancient civilizations fascinating and mysterious, creating mythos in the same way androids find roller coasters and apartment complexes fascinating, exciting, and exotic. The way the game handles these themes and seamlessly creates these parallels were brilliant and could only be told through the eyes of a video game, as this facade does not only affect the androids, but as players. We are also fighting a battle for survival, but a meaningless one. No matter what we do, our choices are meaningless, as all of it was based on a lie, just like 2B was programmed to kill 9S whenever he found out the truth. A game that achieves these almost fourth wall-breaking moments isn't one that you will see every day, much reminding me of the plot twist found in Bioshock, where our actions were driven by an unseen plan. This not only adds a sense of uselessness to the androids in the story, but also a sense of insignificance to the player actions. Sometimes the best course of action is to not act at all, as showcased in the fight against number 2. Reaching the true final ending E, which involves a credits minigame, is yet another cryptic message, alluring you to a fight against the game creators themselves. If you fail time after time, the game prompts you with messages of a meaningless fight, but if you don't give up, it does reveal that the pods, the only ones that consistently know the truth about Project Yorha, are able to repair our android characters' bodies. However, cycle after cycle, the pods themselves start to gain emotions and become self-aware, and decides to not wipe all of their memories. Another ending reveals the intelligence sending off an arc with machine lifeforms and the previous antagonists, Adam and Eve, or how I like to call them, the naked dudes, to a new planet, and maybe in search of other lifeforms to further progress their evolution, as Project Yorha and their use and purpose out of the androids is now gone. That isn't made entirely clear. The overall story is often convoluted, leaving many unanswered questions, but open to interpretation. Many of the things I stated here is my interpretation. You yourself might have your own. That adds a very unique take on video game storytelling, but also can be a little frustrating as many points are left unclear. But I believe one thing that does make the story more interesting is not just what we are left off by the ending, but the way it deals with the beliefs, existence, emotions, seeking identity, and self-awareness, which in turn leads to the characters. The free-willed machines cut off from the network appear to have no purpose. When they gain consciousness, they have no morals or concepts, so they resort to what they find: human history, ideals, society, and culture, desperately looking for a purpose, being loyal to a king. But like the androids, if that happens to be shattered, their purpose, their existence, fades into nothingness, leading them to insanity, potentially even killing themselves in hope to find their god, their purpose. However, some are highly intelligent, like Pascal, the most unique and best written machine in the game. Pascal seeks nothing but peace. It willingly works with androids and any other machine that wants to seek the same in their village. Many of their ways still follow the human ways, but they don't follow it blindly. They are highly rational and maintain a balance. They are using humans, their gods, as a stepping stone for their own society and culture. Following too much to one side can cause problems, as stated previously, and yet another example is on genders. So machine life forms follow genders, and even ages, in the same way humans do. We often see machines with lipstick, a top hat, or a cute ribbon. It is obvious machines cannot have sexes or ages, and we as players find that quite odd, but also endearing and adorable, but they adopt it to form identity that they crave after gaining consciousness to once again seek purpose. The boss in the recreation park area is another good example, a machine which is trying to understand the concepts of love, yet it fails to impress its male counterpart, shattering its sense of existence, identity, and meaning of self, ultimately driving it insane, and is up to the androids and players to destroy it. After going through this, I think it's clear why the story can be seen as many as a masterpiece. It's subjective, of course, but the subject matter in question, the philosophical messages, are fascinating, not only when it comes to the actual storytelling, but the way it blends with the gameplay and how that can affect the player. Even the soundtrack, which goes without mention to be one of the constant aspects in a game that never ceases to be stunning, shifting in and out depending what's happening on the screen. Each melody can grab you and cause you to be virtually lost. However, one can argue if you lack empathy for what's going on and just play for fun as a piece of entertainment, in turn the story will come off as average at best, as the game relies heavily on the player's head to be told. There are other faults, of course, when it comes to the story, besides the ones already stated. There's characters. 2B, 9S, Pascal are amazing and probably the most memorable characters in recent years. Even the pods have more personality, growth, and charisma towards the end in comparison to many other game characters of other games I've played, but A2, though my personal favorites and most unique android, felt lacking when it comes to development or general characterization. So much more could have been done with her, as she is part of a previous cycle, she's an anomaly, and she's conflicted. All of that makes her super interesting, yet as a character she feels unfinished. All of that said, there's many other faults, especially when it gets to actual gameplay. Gameplay is often connected with the storytelling, be the act of playing the game and how futile it can be as the story tells, but also to other small things such as wiping the memory of Pascal, which went through tremendous loss, its purpose taken away. It then asks the player to either strip away his memory or kill him. Many choices like these are presented in the game. Some might even lead to bad endings, ending the story prematurely, though those are often hidden. But by choosing to wipe away his memories, you engage in a hacking minigame, and as you destroy those small black balls and the weight of it, you've grown to like and appreciate Pascal for the past 20 to 30 hours of playtime, and yet you are here wiping his memory and removing a part of what makes him who he is. And that choice, that action wasn't just made with a simple button press, press F to pay respects. It is done in gameplay. And many other examples of these are found throughout the game, adding a lot more weight to your choices and actions organically. However, taking the story elements completely out of the gameplay, it suffers from lack of depth syndrome. At first, this is a traditional Platinum game. Player movement and control is the smoothest and best that you can find. 10 out of 10 for running animations, and the same is applied for the animations in combat. It's smooth as silk, and every animation makes sense, with heavy and light attacks for you to smash, at least for 2B and 2A, that is. That allows you to set up 4 combos. Depending on what weapon you use and what slot you use it with, it can change its movesets, having a total of 2 slots that you can change at will, which in reality gives you 4 weapons total to play with and switch around. In between, you also possess your pod, allowing you to fire off range attacks and cooldown based abilities called pod programs, which again you switch around for your own pleasure and whatever suits the fight. My favorite was by far Mirage, allowing me to turn a whole group of machine into scrap metal with its huge area of effect damage. Add to this the skillful play of dodging attacks, with well-timed dodges rewarding you with combos to perform or even counters. And if you do get hit even on normal mode, it feels genuinely dangerous, as HP does not regenerate over time, which in turn forces you to pay attention to your enemies, making the combat ever more engaging instead of just dumb fun with combos. Turning this up to hard or above difficulty, a hit can mean a certain death, and death here follows the same design idea of a Souls game. You will lose all of your plug-in chips, which functions as gear, so it's punishing for sure. So with that said, it initially starts as a super fun combat to tear down machines and shoot them, and sucking at the game can be dangerous, making you want to get better, and what it seems to be an in-depth and skillful combat that will never get old. But over time, it proves to be rather shallow, in particular due to its RPG elements. As you get more powerful, as you build your perfect loadout or build with your plug-in chips, which also involves a sort of minigame in order to place them, which does feel a little bit gimmicky in its overall design, but obtaining powerful chips like Deadly Heal and other healing chips based on your damage done and enemies killed, coupled with the fact that you are swimming in credits by the later game, allowing you to just hoard dozens of consumables, it nullifies a lot of the game's mechanics. Enemy variety doesn't help much this issue either. There's quite a decent amount of different machines to fight, but very few of them introduce new mechanics to deal with. Only by Route C a new mechanic is introduced, which is quite an annoying one, the virus, where it starts removing part of your android abilities, but once again is nullified by consumables that you can easily buy at this point. So there are interesting builds you can create, no doubt about that, like as A2, creating this taunt build based on risk versus reward coupled with the Berserk ability can provide the most fun and complex build in the game, where you take more damage but also do far more. Now you can turn the difficulty up, so you take a more dangerous approach to enemies, but that isn't gonna magically add more depth to the combat. And not only that, hard and above removes the ability to lock on to enemies, which is an interesting take on increasing difficulty, but I couldn't help but feel it was rather clunky to try and hit faraway enemies with my pod without a lock-on mechanic, while at the same time aim my melee attacks, since the reticle isn't all that accurate. The camera is also not always perfect in all the perspectives, sometimes making it impossible to see enemies, adding once again to that feeling of unfairness. Bosses, especially in the 2D perspective, with all of the effects and animations going on the screen, also made it difficult to see their attacks and patterns, and while playing on a difficulty that can kill you in about 2 hits, once again, doesn't feel like you're challenging yourself or making you feel like you need to get better, but instead causing you to get annoyed at the game, not at yourself, leading to that feeling of unfairness again, which is not what you want to feel when you turn that difficulty up or expect from a hard game. Easy mode is the polar opposite and quite interesting, adding a bunch of auto attack features for people that have trouble with this style of combat, or games journalists. Another issue is on upgrades. There's quite a nice selection of weapons in the game, all with different movesets, from light to heavy attacks, which are great, but being an RPG and like the plug-in chips, you need to improve and upgrade them. And here, the upgrading system can feel like an absolute boring grind. Weapons, in fact, aren't that bad. Even without trying, you most likely get to the last level by Route C, if you don't change your weapons all that often, that is. However, the pod upgrades, some materials were just so ridiculous in the amount of grind is required, like pure water. There's only one place that you can get it from and one quest. In total, you're gonna need 20 or more to fully upgrade a single pod, out of 3. So you either don't upgrade at all, or you will slowly reach insanity levels by going to the flooded city area and in and out and in and out over and over again to get the pure water required, and not counting all of the rest of the materials needed. So yeah. Now, a very unique take the game has on gameplay, which the original Nier did it also, is on presentation and perspectives. This isn't just a third-person game, it is also a 2D game, and a top asymmetric view kind of game. All these points of view are almost perfectly picked throughout the game, enhancing the overall experience. It connects with everything going on perfectly. However, there's some issues with the one I mentioned before, how sometimes the force perspective makes you unable to see some enemies or even attacks, which makes it frustrating and unfair, and another is on controls. They are amazingly smooth in every perspective, absolutely. But if there's constant shifts, it can often make you confused as a player. Like for an example, in a 3D perspective, on a normal third-person perspective, you often might look at an obstacle and deduce that you can go around it or jump over it. But in a 2D perspective, those rules change, adding to a weird feeling as you play the game. Disparities almost, as in one moment, I can go around this object or I can jump off this railing, but now I can't. Another unique take on gameplay, like all the different perspectives, is the jet play, or even the hacking minigame. Playing as your mech, your jet, can be amazingly fun, giving you flashbacks of those old shooter games, but like the combat, it proves to be surface level only, as over time, the more you play it, you realize there's nothing to it besides holding the fire button and hitting the attack key to melee attack over and over again, while dodging some attacks here or there. But even the orbs, the bullets that enemies fire, which are very interesting, are often destroyed by either melee or ranged attacks, so your best defense is offense in a lot of cases, leading you to just stare at the screen, smashing the same buttons over and over again once you get the ins and outs of the mech gameplay. And this happened on one of the most cool looking bosses in the entire game, which was a little bit sad. The hacking minigame is the same. Doing every once in a while was great. Awesome even. Probably the best take on a hacking minigames ever. However, forcing you to do it over and over again when you play 9S proved to be an infuriating chore, especially those later missions in Route C, just hacking minigames after hacking minigames in order to progress further. One benefit that this adds, of course, is variation, which is amazing. The game really tries to throw all this different stuff at you to keep it fresh. Melee attacks, range attacks, mech gameplay, hacking minigames. And it accomplishes that to some extent, but that only lasts for so long, especially since most of the combat, the systems, mechanics, lack depth. The smooth controls are very satisfying, like smashing your attacks, and that does carry it throughout the game, but at a closer inspection is lacking that much desired depth. Then we get to the world and quest structure. This is an open world game, and some areas are indeed amazing looking, really feeling like this desolate and sterile world at times. It has its own charm and can resonate with you when it's put together with the amazing soundtrack. However, a lot of the times you are forced to go through the same areas over and over and over again. The environment does change with the storyline at times, like when the Goliath tears a giant hole in the city ruins. But there's a severe lack of detail when it comes to the world. Almost everywhere you go is the same buildings with nothing really on them. You may find these little hidden spots for loot, but for the most part it's the samey locations over and over again. Furthermore, there's an absurd number of invisible walls, places that you can clearly jump over but the game doesn't allow you, or little places that seems like you can get into but is blocked off by the magic of video games. All of this ends up breaking a lot of the immersion, engagement, and even freedom the game tries to have with its open world. Another problem that this adds is towards the quest structure. Main quests are great, but even those are plagued by the same running through the same areas over and over. Sure, there is fast travel at safe spots, but that doesn't remove the problem completely. The goal of this is to serve as breaks in between the story and explore the world. Is a reason why the map isn't all that detailed in the first place, which is fair enough. Great even, but there's really nothing to get yourself lost into. There's never that urge to just go out and explore, as most interesting places were introduced in the main story quests. Outside of that, the environmental storytelling was severely handicapped. The most interesting place I found outside of any quest was this lake in the middle of the desert that I decided to fish on. The side quests caused this to be even worse, placed in the same areas over and over again, and not only that, a lot of these side quests are extremely uninspiring, and there's loads of them, like fetch and escort quests. That said, some of those were quite interesting to go through on a story point of view, like when a little kid robot hates his mom and runs away from home. It was a very endearing side story that only Nier could produce, and the soundtrack played after that made it all the better. Or how a boring fetch quest can turn into an amazing play made by robots. A lot of the quests also lack voice acting. What is here is actually pretty decent, but a lot of the dialogue is lacking or missing, which is common in these Japanese titles, which I believe is how expensive it can get over there, so it's just something you got to get used to. And finally, we get to the routes, the playthroughs. A with 2B, with the faults we discussed, was still great. Route B, however, completely wrecks the pacing the game currently had, forcing you to essentially play the game with 9S, the companion of the previous playthrough, through his eyes, and on a story level, again, is amazing. But when it comes to gameplay, you are just repeating 80% of the things you already did. To make matters worse, it's with 9S that you are forced through those hacking minigames over and over. On a bright side, you can't control robots of your own and even form your army, but to do that you have to act when they can't see you, so stealth your way into it, which doesn't make any sense in a game with such a visceral combat, leading you to avoid and even forget that such mechanic and ability exists anyway. And not only that, his fighting style pales in comparison to 2B, as he only possesses one weapon with very limited combos. I love 9S as a character, but I don't want to play with 9S anytime in the near future again, let's put it like that. What's frustrating is that Route C continues the story forward, and is where a lot of cool and mind-bending plot twists occur, and you get to play as 9S and 2A, the most fun androids to play when it comes to combat, yet she's locked off behind this grind. I wonder how many people actually get to the true ending at Route C and just stop playing at Route A, thinking that's the end of it, or Route B is just a run-of-the-mill New Game Plus that a lot of people don't care about. And finally, we have the technical issues, as graphical fidelity. Even for 2017, the game didn't impress many. Animations, character models were amazing, but when it came to fidelity, was extremely lacking. However, to make matters worse, the PC port was just horrible and barely working. For some, not even working at all. And nowadays, this is unacceptable. And yes, nowadays, as the Game of the Year edition released this year. So, you might think I hated this game. Well, I didn't. I loved it. I had fun with the combats and loved the story and soundtrack. But many of this came with a lot of faults, and if I was to follow my feelings, this would be an A+ game, simply due to its storyline. However, it is a game, and a large part of a game is gameplay, and though it's satisfying, it has many fundamental issues. Honestly, I believe Nier Automata would have favored more if it was simply an action hack-and-slash game, like Devil May Cry, with no RPG elements and no open world, and was far more compact, yet retaining its overall story. And this way, environments could have had more detail, the perspectives with the camera could have been used even better, and all of those gameplay issues wouldn't exist, and Platinum Games would have been right at home. With all of that said, I'm gonna give Nier Automata an A-. It's a damn good game, one I still recommend anyone to play, but the game clashes against itself a lot. Most of its gameplay had both great positives and the great negative attached to it, which does prevent it from reaching that masterpiece level that the story so much sets it up. However, at its core, the story, soundtrack, characters, and how all of that can reflect onto the player himself, if you are able to resonate with it, then it indeed can be considered a masterpiece. Anyway guys, that does it for me for today. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you all again soon.
Tell me, God, are you punishing me? Is this the price I'm paying for my past mistakes?